Okie doke. Welcome everybody to the 2023 Supplier Briefing put on by the City of Moreton Bay. My name is Anne Lawrence and it is my privilege to be your MC for today's event. Firstly, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional country across our region. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kabi Kabi, the Jinnaburra and the Turrbal traditional custodians and the broader Moreton Bay region, as well as their elders past, present and emerging. So I work in the City of Moreton Bay's Economic Development Department, and I think I've got the best job in the world, just saying that, because we get to help you as local businesses, and one of our objectives is to help you thrive and prosper. So in my team, in addition to focusing on local business, it is also about helping you gain access to some of the procurement opportunities, which is what this event is all about. This event is also aligned to our regional economic development strategy and the objectives therein. So I'm very grateful for you to make the effort to be here this morning, and this is our very first event on this topic and will be one of many. Before I hand over to our Acting CEO for the purposes of our formal welcome, just a few housekeeping. So the amenities are out the door and to your left. In the event of an emergency, you will need to exit at the door where the registration table is and make your way to the parking area and wait until further instructions. Please ensure mobile phones are silent, please, for the duration of the event. There is an official photographer on hand to capture shots of today's event. If you do not wish to be photographed, just make sure you let him know. We're also capturing the event on video, as you're well aware, through the notices, just for those who weren't able to be here. Now there's a few missing seats. We did have a full RSVP list. So just a heads up, stick around for morning tea because it's catered well. So you may want to stock up before lunch and you may need, also, council employees will be roaming as well with a video to ask your opinion about today's event, and there will be questions as well. So one will be for promotion purposes for next time we do this event about why somebody should come to this event, and the other one is genuine feedback to help us design and deliver better events in the future, because as I said, this is our first. Okie doke. So we have our first apology for the day. Our Deputy Mayor, Jodie Shipway, has unfortunately been called away. She has had to be in Brisbane this morning on behalf of our Mayor, but we have a very good substitute, and I'd like to welcome to the stage our Acting CEO, Paul Martins.
Good morning. Thank you, Anne. Well, good morning, everyone. Terrific turnout of businesses, our local businesses here today for this 2023 Supplier Briefing. I'd like to start off by also acknowledging the traditional custodians across our region, which includes the Kabi Kabi, Jinnaburra and Turrbal people, as Anne mentioned. On behalf of the Mayor, Mayor Peter Flannery unfortunately couldn't be here today. The Mayor is travelling, and as you heard, the Deputy Mayor. So I don't know if that makes me the C team. I'm not the B team, so the C team, you're stuck with me instead. But welcome to MSEC, welcome to Morayfield to learn more about doing business with us, the City of Moreton Bay. Earlier this year, Council announced a record $861 million budget, which included $264 million committed to capital works. We also have a substantial operational works budget. The announcement of this budget ensures that infrastructure keeps pace with population growth. As a council, we're focusing on housing, jobs, road and transport issues, just like other growing cities. Our 500,000 residents living in the region right now already puts us on par with the ACT. By 2046, we expect to be sitting close to 800,000 people. That means that every year there'll be around 12,000 people moving into the City of Moreton Bay. We obviously need the infrastructure to keep up with the population growth and the services to keep up with the needs of our community. We are also only 9 years away from the opening of the 2032 Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games, and the supply chain and procurement opportunities for this major event are already surfacing. The Queensland Government announced just 2 weeks ago that the procurement spend is expected to be around $180 billion over the next 9 years. Playing a key part in the Games is our opportunity to introduce Moreton Bay to the world. We have more than 31,000 businesses in our region, and we want our local businesses to have every possible opportunity to win work with government, with all levels of government, and especially with local government. That's why we're here today. We recognise the need to be transparent and to support the marketplace with our procurement needs. Council is committed to supporting the development of our local businesses and growing our region's economy through events and programs like these today, designed under the umbrella of our Regional Economic Development Strategy, or REDS as we call it. Events like this are not only linked to the REDS, but also our strategic directives aligned to procurement. We're committed to increasing the percentage of local products and services through policies such as Council's local preference policy. I'm pleased to report that since upgrading our local preference policy last year, we have recorded a 9% increase in the proportion of council spend going to local businesses. We expect that number to keep growing, and of course, for those of you in the room who may not be locals just yet, there are ways in which you can engage with the local supply chain to have more local content or more locals employed on your project, and we're here to help in that regard. Today's supplier briefing is the first of many, as Anne said. Tickets for today literally flew off the online shelf, and we know that there is demand for these types of events. As Anne said, this session is being recorded and will be placed on our website post-event for those who missed out on being here today. And I'd really encourage those of you who are going to bid for procurement opportunities with Council in 3 months, 6 months' time or further afield to review the video before making your submission next time. The Q&A panel later in the morning will be a great insight into the opportunities available across the entire council procurement supply chain, and I'd encourage you all to ask many questions. We wish to not only communicate with you about upcoming opportunities, but we want to learn from you as well, so that we can keep improving our specifications and our procurement practices. Staff in the room are here to listen and support you, so please take advantage of this opportunity. Our hope is for the businesses who have invested the time to join us today to get insights from council staff, but also for you to shape your dealings with the state government and other procurement opportunities, leading to a $40 billion economy by 2041. We have some amazing guests supporting this event with information from all levels of government, and some of you have been speaking to the various panel members up the back. So I encourage you at morning tea and at the end to stay and have a chat at those information booths and with staff from across all levels of government. Without further ado, I'd again like to welcome you to this supplier event and pass you back to Anne. Thank you and have a great morning.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Paul will be back, so he's going to moderate our panel. So whilst he's currently acting CEO, his day job is the Chief Economic Development Officer and leading the charge with our REDS, as he referenced before, our Regional Economic Development Strategy. And the numbers that we enticed you with to attend today, the $264 million capital works budget for this year for council, were just blown out of the water with the $180 billion the Queensland Government is going to be spending over the next 9 years. So this is a journey, and so we're on this journey with you. I'd like to acknowledge the diverse range of businesses in the room. So part of the registration process, you gave us a bit of detail. So we've got folks from construction, manufacturing, consulting services, engineering, education, marketing, professional services, and the list goes on. and it's great to see this broad range representation. We also heard what you had to say in your responses to the registration questions. We know that you want to get the most out of the tendering opportunities with council and to understand what those are. We will have done our job properly today if you go away having learnt something today, and if we can answer hopefully all of your questions. If not all, we'll be putting it on notice and coming back to you. So today's event is going to involve multiple presentations. We will be using the Slido. Some of you would have already clicked the QR code. There's stands around the room. We'll put it on screen later. It's currently locked for questions, but it will be open halfway through the proceedings, so think about what type of questions, but we'd love you to hear the presentations first, so hopefully we can answer some of your questions. Following the Q&A, there'll be ample opportunity to continue networking, and it was fabulous to see everybody talking with staff around the room and amongst yourselves for the purposes of inter-business supply chain opportunities. So without further ado, I'd now like to invite Tanika Smith, the Manager of Procurement, to tell us more about what you need to know when doing business with Council. Welcome, Tanika.
Thank you very much, Anne. Welcome and thank you for joining the City of Moreton Bay team this morning. Today I hope to provide you with information on supplying goods and services to Council and provide an understanding of Council's procurement processes. Once I get the clicker working, here we go. So Council generally invites offers in accordance with the requirements of the spend thresholds outlined. When not inviting quotes under an existing contract or entering into a contract under an exception, which I will discuss shortly, Council must obtain one written quote where the expected value of the contract is less than $7,500, invite at least two written quotes where the expected value of the contract is between $7,500 and $15,000, invite at least three written quotations where the expected value of the contract is between $15,000 and $200,000, and invite written tenders where the expected value of the contract is more than $200,000 over the contract term. In establishing and carry out contracts, Council may accept the offer that's most advantageous to it. In this decision making, Council will have regard to the sound contracting principles, and this is across local governments in Queensland. Value for money, open and effective competition, the development of competitive local business and industry, environmental protection and ethical behaviour and fair dealing. Ensuring consideration to the sound contracting procedures, Council may enter into a contract without first inviting quotations or tenders if the contract is made under an exception. In such instance, our procurement thresholds do not apply. Some of the available exceptions include the following. Where Council has decided by resolution that there is only one supplier who's reasonably available, or because it is specialised or confidential in nature of the services that are sought, it would be impractical or disadvantageous for Council to invite quotes or tenders. Where Council enters into a contract under a preferred supply arrangement or a register of pre-qualified supply arrangement that was established through a written tender process. Where Council has decided by resolution to make and adopt a quotation or tender consideration plan, and where Council enters into a contract under a government agency or a local government association Queensland arrangement, for example, the Queensland State Government or a local buy arrangement. We are very fortunate today to have our integrated transport planning and design and project management teams with us to be presenting on information on our record $264 million capital works program. To provide an example of how our thresholds and exceptions in practice, with the significant volume and the value of projects that would need to be established and the capacity and capability of the supplier being critical, and the preparation of invitations would be costly both to Council and our suppliers, Council may not invite public tenders per project, however invite tenders to establish a register of pre-qualified suppliers where projects may then be awarded or entered into under this arrangement. in accordance with the exception mentioned. Council recognises the economic, innovative and social benefits that local supply chains bring to our region and has included a local preference and local weighting into its procurement policies. The objective of our local preference policy is to proactively support local businesses and industry to thrive in the Moreton Bay region and create jobs. For contracts less than $50,000, Council will seek to invite local businesses in the first instance. For contracts greater than $50,000, a 15% evaluation weighting may be provided to local businesses or business who commit to sourcing and creating jobs in the community for the purpose of the contract. As it was mentioned earlier, since launching our local buy preference last year, we've recorded a 9% increase in the proportion of council spend going to local businesses. For some stats, last financial year, 52% of council procurement under $50,000 was awarded to our local businesses, and a total of 41% of council's total procurement expenditure was spent locally. We will continue to proactively support local businesses and industry in our procurement decisions. I take a moment to speak on safety. At Moreton Bay Council, no task is more important than the health and safety of our people, and work health and safety is everyone's responsibility. Council is required to ensure, as far as practical, the well-being, health and safety of all workers throughout council businesses or undertaking, that its activities do not place other persons at risk from work carried out as part of our business or undertaking. It is a mandatory component of awarding a contract to ensure the contractor has a robust health and safety system and practices in place. If a contractor does not adequately demonstrate a commitment to health and safety with a standard it sets out in our management systems, the evaluation committee may decide to put that contractor's submission aside and preclude for further consideration. I highlight also the importance of the compliance of the health and safety systems following award of contract. So as I mentioned, moving forward, it will be a mandatory requirement in our procurement activities. Safety is the most important thing to everyone, our contractors and our people. Okay, so with the preliminary and process information shared, I share with you, and I believe these will be provided after, so please feel free not to have to write it down very quickly. But the following goods, services or works, existing contracts will expire this financial year, and I anticipate that public written tenders will be invited. The list does not identify every opportunity, and I encourage you to ensure that you are registered to our procurement platforms that I will discuss shortly to be alerted of upcoming opportunities. I take the opportunity also to identify that further to the exceptions earlier, Council may also enter into a contract under a local buy arrangement. There is a local buy initiative at the moment that are refreshing 48 panel arrangements that are now open for our local suppliers to tender an application for. I highlight, however, they are closing 31st of August this month. We have a representation from Local Buy here today at one of our sessions and networking in one of our information booths. I strongly encourage you have any questions or require any further information to touch base with our Local Buy representatives. This is an opportunity that I would strongly encourage everyone to consider with 48 open panels. Okay, so today I also hope to provide some foundational tips on how to submit a conforming, competitive and best value response. I note these are foundational, just purely to assist you in the future. To read and understand the documents that are issued to ensure you understand the needs of council. For an invitation to tender, this will generally include the conditions of tender, a specification, the general conditions of contract, and any supporting technical documents or drawings. Please ensure you take the time to read and understand the needs of council prior to preparing a response. Take the time to understand the contractual obligations. Again, ensure you read and understand the contract specification and general conditions of contract to ensure you understand the needs of council and the obligations of both parties. A contract specification is the foundation of a contract, a document that council clearly and accurately describes the obligations of both contractor and council. It defines either the goods or products and services we are seeking, the outcomes, and the functional and performance requirements to be achieved for the purpose of that contract. This document becomes an essential contract management document. Once you've read and understood the requirements, structure your tender document clearly. I also highlight this is transferable to quotation documents. The tender documents will generally request a particular format or structure to keep your tender response document clear, logical, and well organised. Include a clear and persuasive introduction that states the purpose, rationale, and central proposition of your response. Once you have read and understood the requirements, use the relevant response forms or directly respond to the information detailed in the evaluation criteria. Which takes me on to the next part of take the time to read and understand the evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria is what council has predetermined how we will assess offers to determine best value for money to council. Closely follow the criteria that will be stated in the documents. Provide specific examples on how you meet the evaluation criteria rather than simply stating that you do. It is important to highlight your credentials and provide verifiable experience, as well as explaining your approach to delivering the goods and services to meet the needs of council. Identify the requirements that are most important to council and incorporate this within your response. Council, the evaluation committee, do not know your business. So please prepare your response as though the evaluation committee does not know your business, and do not assume because you have worked with us that council or the evaluation committee will know your business. I highlight this as in assessing any responses and part of the evaluation criteria. The evaluation committee can only consider information contained in your offer. While the quotation tender is being advertised, if you require clarity on any part of the documents, please seek clarification through the online forums. A simple but sometimes overlooked, choose the right references. Another key part of delivering a successful response is ensuring that you do choose and nominate the right referees. Use referees that know your products or services. Make sure you get permission to use them before including them in your response. And I encourage you to brief them on the highlights of the tender so they can target their comments to the needs of council and the contract itself. Submit your tender in time. Late or incomplete tender responses may be excluded from further consideration. Strongly encourage, do not leave your tender submission until the last minute. The closing date and time is always nominated in the documents. And last and often but overlooked, I encourage our suppliers to seek feedback on their responses, whether you be successful or not. Council may provide a debrief on areas of strength and opportunities to submit a more competitive and conforming response in the future. I note, however, these are not used to defend decision making or compare against any other tenderer's response. Okay, so all local governments must publish particular contracts on our website that the value is more than $200,000. This is published on our website, and you may list these awarded on our website at Moreton Bay Council. I highlight this as the information would be of value to our small or medium businesses who are seeking to understand who our primary and principal contractors are and may have opportunities to subcontract to them for our larger, significant contracts. I'm very excited to share that we are one step closer to achieve our corporate plan key initiative to deliver a new framework and strategic practices. Queensland legislation allows for two different contract procedures for local government procurement, either a default contracting procedures or a strategic contracting procedures. Under the strategic contracting procedures, Council will be able to adopt, develop and implement our own contracting and procurement framework. One of the final steps ahead of the transition is Council must adopt, by resolution, a new contract manual and contracting plan that sends out our procedures for different thresholds. The framework provides greater opportunities for our local suppliers, social enterprises and Indigenous businesses in doing business with us. As Anne mentioned earlier, further regular supplier engagement sessions will be held to support this change and to ensure we keep you updated on how to do business with Moreton Council. So speaking earlier with regards if you're interested in doing business with us, for quotations, the first step is to register for free on VendorPanel under categories for goods or services your business provides. There's also a lot of other South East Queensland governments who use VendorPanel, which is also linked to local buy. So the visibility of your business is exposed to many beyond Moreton Bay Council. For tenders, register to our tendering portal, e-Procure. There is also online support to both platforms for guidance to ensure that you register to the most appropriate category to ensure you are alerted for upcoming opportunities. So thank you very much for listening and your time this morning. I look forward to reviewing future responses from your business should the opportunity present itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanika. Tanika is going to be back for the Q&A session. I think she provided some excellent practical advice there, and there may be opportunities to dig a bit further about the safety aspects or the differences between quotations and tenders, etc. So no question is a silly question. All questions are great questions. So next up, and we're running well to time here too, so we've got plenty of time for questions. I'd now like to introduce two folks. They're going to do a double act. We've got John Dare Williams, Manager of Integrated Transport Planning, and Joel Chapman, Manager of Project Management, and they're going to talk about some of their upcoming opportunities. Please welcome them.
Thanks, Anne. So you've had three very professional speakers so far. Now you get Joel and I. So let's see how this pans out for us. Hey, I just want to pick up on something Paul said earlier as well around the importance of our industry partners. We're clearly transitioning from a region to a city, and we clearly have a finite workforce. We really need those trusted partnerships, those relationships with you as suppliers to enable us to really move forward as we start to embrace the city concept, but also as we do our business as usual. And I'll talk to you about some of those changes that will be happening, particularly around the infrastructure space. Paul spoke to the size of the infrastructure task that we have ahead of us, and it's not something we can do on our own. We certainly need these relationships to be strong and trusted. So you're going to hear today around... Sorry, Joel, you might need to adjust that when you come up. We're going to talk to you today about the Integrated Transport Planning and Design programs. We sit within the infrastructure planning team. There are also strategic infrastructure planning programs, drainage, waterways and coastal planning, parks and recreation that sit in that infrastructure planning, but we're going to focus today on transport planning and design. So we've already spoke at length around the scale of our, the size of our budget. Road and transport infrastructure, the networks take up a third of that capital works program. So it's a significant part of that of the budget that we've recently announced. So there's a lot of work for us over the next 10 plus years to really evolve our transport networks. Sorry, I need to keep checking, make sure we've changed, noting Tanika had a couple of issues. So we run our programs of work across an operational program. Paul spoke around the operational program and a capital program. So our operational program in transport planning and design is where we do our studies, is where we do our planning, where we develop our policy, and where we do all that early works that informs the capital projects that we come up with. Our operational program is around $2 million a year, so it's not insignificant. And I will talk a little bit later about some of the stuff we got in for 23, 24 and the longer term program. So we'll be quite specific around some of the opportunities that are coming up. They're very much knowledge consulting services in that operational program. So we're looking for, again, people to bring to us their knowledge of how we do things at a bigger scale and how we do things across Australia and possibly internationally. Our capital program, that's the one where we spoke around, it's about a third of the 264 mil, so we've got around $90 million a year. For the next 10 years, we've got around 200, these are quite big numbers for council. We've got around $250 million of major intersection work, so this is over the next 10 years. We've got road safety projects around 20 mil, and we've got active transport around 100 mil. So council is investing quite a lot in its transport networks and around how we move more sustainably. Our 0 to 10 years plus program is quite considerable for us, and I'll talk a little bit around how we've augmented that to reflect the change in the scale of our region as it transcends to a city. So we've got major road projects of values between $50 to $250 million. In addition to that, we've several major corridors with a combined value. Well, the corridors themselves are $250 million worth of infrastructure planning and design and delivery. For council, these are significant changes. We haven't really had to deal with this scale of infrastructure previously. So again, for us, it's around making sure that we not only have the staff in-house that are able to design and deliver, but we're able to reach out to our trusted industry partners who can support us in that evolution. We'll talk around the design services that we look for, but we do go external for design services, project delivery certification, and again, I won't touch on those. All of those projects will move forward through to construction. Joel will pick up on some of the elements that his team will be looking for if I don't forget where his slide is. So I did allude to this earlier. For council, in transitioning from a region to a city, we go to this polycentric, you may have heard this term, polycentric city, which means we have a lot of connected centres. We're not a big clustered CBD like Brisbane. We need all of our centres to talk to each other. For us, that means we've got some major transport corridors that we need to deliver. Over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been working through how do we package these up and design and procure them. We've identified that there's a risk to us in doing lots of little bits of work because of the issues we have with connecting all of those little packages of work. And the size of projects is something different for us. Tanika spoke to the procurement process, etc. For us in integrated transport planning design, it's something we've not dealt with before. And I'm telling you this because it is something we are looking to our industry partners to support us in as we evolve our understanding and knowledge. The opportunity for us as a city, though, is to raise the profile of our city. It does. We are starting to talk around, like I say, $250 million, big numbers, pieces of infrastructure that we have to deliver. And it helps us to work with other partners within council to really promote that as a city. Sorry. And as I've spoke to, some of our major corridors coming up, $100 million plus design and construction, and some of them easily double that. Old Gympie Road is one that we've been designing for a while. That's currently at $160 million, I think. I'm looking to my colleague at the back there who hasn't said no yet, so we're okay on that one. Buchanan Road, including a bridge, is around $250 million, and Young's Crossing Road, further stages post the bridge. Again, we're talking some very big numbers for council. So what that means for us is we need to reflect on our procurement methodologies and who we work with in the market. And I'll hand over to my colleague, Joel, who will talk you through how he'd like you to work with him.
Thanks for bringing the microphone down, John. Morning, everyone. So I'm representing project management, and I guess by default we sit somewhere between procurement and our planning teams, and we've got to join the dots and follow a raft of processes. Part of that, I guess, is with maturing of council, obviously becoming now City of Moreton Bay. It's important that we understand who we're working with to try and best leverage what we can bring as well as what our suppliers can bring to delivering our projects. One of the things that's been front of mind is around increasing our engagement with suppliers. We certainly understand that tendering and bidding on projects is a time and cost implication, and without any knowledge and competing against a large array of potential competitors, your appetite is probably somewhat limited. So the big push we're trying to do as part of our maturing is to increase our supplier engagement. You can expect to be contacted by our project management team as projects are starting to come to market. They'll reach out to you. They will try and identify, one, whether you have the right services to be able to respond to the tender. They'll be wanting to understand, do you have the time and availability to respond in the timeframes? And more importantly, they'll be looking to see that your business and, more importantly, your key people have the demonstrated experience that we can work with to try and make sure that the project is a success. Part of the procurement process, as Tanika's touched on, is understanding their contractual obligations. So it's important when you're submitting a tender that you understand not only the contract, but we're expecting you to have some familiarity with the site and the conditions of which you'll be working in. And that will form a very compelling part of your tender submission. Touching on the focus of local supply chain, increasing local suppliers on large contracts is something that will also add significant value to your tender. The safety and environmental elements, this is something that we've been working hard in project management to bring to the forefront around all our projects. So we'll be looking for a huge advocacy of safety in your submissions, as well as environmental awareness around how the works that are impacting the environment in the particular project state. The safety component is not just a tick and flick exercise. Yes, it's there from a compliance perspective, but we'll be looking to see how our suppliers become a partner with council as a real advocate of safety, not only for their immediate staff, but for the council staff and also the general public that will likely be traversing through those construction sites. The biggest part of working with council as we progress into these large capital programs is making sure that it's the right people for the right role. So there are a lot of new businesses emerging through the region and around southeast Queensland. Strangely enough, all of those businesses generally come with a familiar face. As I'm sure everyone in the industry is aware, people move around. It's not just about the name that's on the business card or on the letterhead. So understanding who we're doing business is a real key to understand how council can move forward, and it's bringing those emergency businesses forward on the journey as well. And I think that's probably enough from me before I start tangling my words, so I'll hand back to John to identify some further examples of where those services can be applied.
Thanks, Joel, and you nicked on my notes. Thank you. So first of all, I'm going to talk around some of the services that we commonly look to bring in from industry, and then more specifically around some of the programs for this financial year moving forward, our pipeline of work. So there's a list of services there that we occasionally go to market for. Now, we do have an in-house capability, but as I said earlier, we use our industry partners to support that in-house capability, either in terms of managing our peaks and troughs, or also bringing in specific experience. So when we go to market, we are looking for you to bring that specific experience in. So I won't go through the list of service types that we have there. I think the presentation will be made available after this, so you can have a look at them, or you can write them frantically if you do so wish. So I'm going to talk about some specific programs now. We have the first cab off the rank is our annual minor construction program. Now, a lot of this stuff is delivered internally by our internal construction crews, but I do want to highlight, I guess, the first one on there, which is called our Missing Link Pathways program, which, if you don't know what it means, can sound a little bit mysterious. It's effectively a footpath, program that looks to fill our active transport gaps in our network. Now, we currently have around $4 million a year on that program. This is one of the programs where we'll be working with Joel and his team to see how we can bundle that up, package that up, and with Tanika and her team to make that more efficient for us. So is there an opportunity for us, rather than go to a number of small suppliers, to look for someone within the region that can help us bundle that into a design and deliver space? So we're open to considering, as Joel said, some slightly different procurement processes if they will provide value, they fit within the framework in which we're able to procure, as Tanika outlined previously, but can give us scales of economy and can support really the quantum of work we have to do within our region within a relatively finite capital program budget. The second program I'm going to talk to is our planning program. This is the operational program. I'm going to point Simon Bennett at the back, who's put his hand up and stood up. Well done, Simon. He's not starting a Mexican wave. I just wanted to point him out. If you've got any questions about this program, he's your best person to speak to. This is that operational program I spoke around $2 million a year. What we've listed out here are those projects that we have for this financial year. So, it is this financial year, 23-24. We put the budget and we put when we're due to go to market. As we've explained, we want to move into a space where when we go to market, we know we're going to get tenders back, and we know that the people that we're going to are able to deliver the work that we want them to do. And part of that process is enabling the tenderers to understand broadly what the budget is within what we can do within our procurement framework to enable you to focus your responses. Again, I'm not going to go through all these individually, but you see we've got some pretty big work here, and you'll start to see some of the bigger projects you may have seen in the media as well, where we're looking to really get council's position on some of the bigger infrastructure that maybe the state's delivering. So as a council, we want to be informed when we negotiate with the state government. The third program, is our design program. Josh Ellis, who's fortunately stood up at the back there and is just about to raise his hand. Thank you. We'll be running this program, so any questions about these programs, you can either ask Josh or Joel may know some of these as well. I spoke about our big program, our big corridors. One of those corridors that we've got at the moment, this is a road corridor, transport corridor, is Old Gympie Road. Excuse me. We're looking for probably a single provider to support us in integrating all of those elements of design together and provide us probably with a broad consulting overview of what that corridor should look like. It's around 7 kilometres, but it's around $160 million. Depending on where we are in the year at the moment, you'll probably all be aware of the escalating costs of everything in terms of materials, labour, etc. So we're chasing our tail with some of these projects, but looking to really rein in some of the spend that we have. The other ones are our Young's Crossing Road I mentioned. Now, the other thing I think I can say, and I've spoken to some people about this previously, is when we look to go to market, we're trying to avoid a race to the bottom in terms of fees. We're trying to get, I think Tanika spoke about value for money. When we look at value for money, what we're trying to do is get an appropriate level of input from our consultants commensurate with the complexity of the work. And what we'd like to do at the start of these processes is start with confidence between us and our industry partners that we have the right budget to deliver the job. What we don't want to be in a position whereby a tender's been awarded solely on the lowest price, which means that we start in a fractious, well, possibly a fractious relationship, but knowing that we're going to have challenges down the road. We'd like everybody to be working to the same goal, comfortable in what we've got in terms of budget and program, because that gives us certainty, gives you certainty as businesses, and enables us to keep on track and program with our executive leadership team and our councillors and the public as well when we inform the public of these programs. The only other one I'm going to pick up on there is the bottom one. I mentioned our active transport network, but our rail trails, so our active transport, cycling as a destination is quite important to us, and our Woodford to Wamarang rail trail, if you're not aware of it, if you don't know about it, I suggest you go and have a ride along it. We'll start to continue to develop that rail trail, which we think will have associated economic benefits as well. So I think I'm finishing on, just let me double check. What's to come over our longer term pipeline. So also aware that, yes, we have things this financial year, but as businesses, you probably need to understand what our longer term pipeline is. So you can continue to hassle Josh and Simon as you start to build up your pipelines as businesses. So over the next 10 years, we've got around $60 million worth of our local government infrastructure plan active transport network. So that's our cycling and our footways. We've got a significant road building program. I know it's not necessarily something that we are looking towards more sustainable modes of transport, but we've got a growing city, and we do need to build some more roads. So I think you'll see there's a significant amount of work that we'll be looking to procure, design and deliver over the next 10 plus years. That is all from me, I think. I don't know what that slide says. Q&A, fantastic. Thanks.
Big thank you to Joel and John. I'm going to use the word brave, because when we were talking about this idea and wanting to come to you and say, we're open, we'd love to start this conversation, both of these guys were at the forefront and saying, yes, of course. And there will be other managers and other departments who will have open up for similar conversations going forward. So we're now moving into the Q&A session. So top of mind for me is, if the transport and integrated planning topic isn't necessarily what you're exactly after, here's also your chance to actually load and raise questions. However, I just want to reflect also on one of the key messages that came through then, which was the partnership approach. And what I heard clearly, and I know having been working with Moreton Bay Council, or City of Moreton Bay I should say, for over 2.5 years, is our success is your success and vice versa. Your success is our success. So we're looking forward to that continued partnership. Okie doke. So, bit of housekeeping associated with how these Q&As are going to run. Whilst our speakers were very careful today to try to cover off on every possible thing you, our audience, might want to know, we understand that there still may be some outstanding questions. Of course there are. And for that reason, we've allocated around 40 minutes, and that's when morning tea will come in, etc. So the QR code is up on the screen. If you haven't already grabbed it, grab it now, because it may disappear. Hopefully not. There's also the stands around the edge as well. So Slido, if you haven't used it before, it's an electronic tool. It's not an app. It's a web browser based. It will allow you to submit your questions and for you to vote on questions as well. So the more popular the question, the more likely it's going to come up to the feed and onto the iPad, which Paul will be using to moderate the panel questions. So it is kind of like a democracy. The most popular questions will get up. You can either choose to put your name alongside them, your questions, or you can remain anonymous. That's fine. It's important to note that data, because we're a government agency, of course, so your data and privacy is important. Just know that the information that you are typing in will be stored on a server internationally, potentially. So if you have a challenge with that, please let us know. So by volunteering to participate in this Q&A, you agree to that transfer of data. Okie doke. Our team has preloaded a couple possible questions into the system, and I see there's a few starting to come through now. And if you want to address any of those, just give them a thumbs up. You can't put like 10 thumbs up on one question. I'm just giving you a heads up now. But we've got two staff behind the scenes, the lovely Deanne and Justine, who they're going to be moderating your questions, because it's also important that we may receive 200 questions and we can't answer them all. You may also be repeating similar questions, so that may be a challenge and it'll be hard to get through. So similar questions will be moderated out. And finally, be respectful, pretty please. Please keep on topic about procurement topics. If there's anything off topic, feel free to talk with us in the networking session and we'll try to help you. But we're going to keep this Q&A to procurement related matters. Paul and myself, because I'll be off to the side, can see exactly what's coming through on these iPads, and please continue to type into your devices. Now I'd like to invite our panellists and our moderator, Paul, back to the stage to kick off the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Hopefully you're all using Slido already, but I'm going to start by asking you a few questions. Audience participation, you've got to earn your morning tea. So can I just have a show of hands, who's a local business? Your business is in the City of Moreton Bay area. Okay, that's about 40%, 50%, that's good. Who here has done a procurement process with City of Moreton Bay Regional Council previously? Okay, that's probably 70%. Who here has been successful in a procurement process? That's about 40%, 50%. So that's good to know. So those of you who haven't been successful, I'd be networking with those who have been successful as a start. Now, Joel and John were surprisingly entertaining earlier. I work with them and I can assure you they're not normally that entertaining on a daily basis. And they focused quite rightly a lot on the capital programs, but I want to start with Tanika, specifically around our operational programs, because I suspect there's people in here who might be interested in maintenance contracts, in gardening contracts, even in just office supplies and the day-to-day activities a council needs. We get valuations done on properties, we buy office supplies, we have a range of just everyday items we need to buy. Probably $60 to $100 million gets spent every year just on those kind of activities, Tanika. And you did touch on this in your slides, but what's the best way for those activities, which aren't big procurement values? They're not in the 60 million or 10 million that John was presenting. So what's the best way for the audience, not only here, but watching this at a later date, to be aware of that and to participate?
Thanks, Paul. Absolutely. So there are many good services and works beyond the capital works projects that we spoke of today. One that we highlight in a few conversations I've already had to this morning was ensure that you reach out to procurement team. May I shout them out? Yeah, if my procurement team could just stand up and give everybody a wave. There's quite a few of them. But reach out to the procurement in the first instance to understand where those contracts are, because typically we try to look at the expected value over the contract term. However, there are many. You may touch on ICT, from mowing services, from recruitment panels. There are many that are going out. So first, register is also to e-Procure. That's always where we advertise our tendering activities. And for lower value, also ensure that you are registered to VendorPanel for quotations. However, I would always just encourage, reach out. We're strongly encouraging to start engaging with council and our suppliers, even if that means a conversation with our procurement team, so we can give you some information on your specific goods services. And the important part that we do is we then try to connect you to our customers. And if you are a local business, we'll also then try to connect you to our economic development team to try to maximise those opportunities.
Great, thanks Tanika. And you also touched on local buy. Where's the local buy team? Can you just stand up for everyone? So local buy as well. In my world of economic development, my day job, most of my work, my team's work, contracts below $50,000, the local buy panel system is really useful. So if you're providing a service, goods as well, but service, the local buy system helps you connect to all 77 councils in Queensland and many big and large organisations as well. So make sure, if you're not aware of local buy, go see them at the information booth. It might just help you open some additional doors. Thanks. Now, one of the first questions here for each of the panel members, because you've all assessed tenders, what are the common aspects of a business's tender application that hinders their tender evaluation score? Start with Tanika.
I touched on it earlier, but particularly for me is we always incorporate the evaluation criteria within the documents that we put out to our suppliers. And unfortunately, it's one of the lack of the response to the evaluation criteria, ensuring that that's all we can assess against. But also, as I mentioned, the assumption that we know your business. A lot of the debriefings that I have held was there was an assumption that because they've worked with council for so long that we just knew that they had worked with us, even if it be an extended period of time. But I just reiterate, one thing is that the evaluation committee can only take into consideration what you submit in your offer. So please don't overlook the importance of pitching and selling yourselves, particularly to address the evaluation criteria.
Thanks, Tanika. So probably from our perspective, we're very focused on understanding your knowledge of the project and your ability to deliver on the project objectives. So having a very generic, non-specific methodology in your tender response is probably something that I guess is very difficult to interpret and I guess draw a recognition of how well you actually understand the project and the requirements that we're looking for. Similarly, identification of the actual site and the context of the site and the impacts that that project will have on the surrounding environment, whether that be traffic management, whether it could be environmental controls if it's next to a waterway, all those sorts of things, demonstrating your intimate knowledge of the site and the constraints that the project needs to have addressed. So there are probably a couple of key recommendations around preparing your response.
Thanks, guys. I guess I'd second what Tanika and Joel have said. The other thing, building on what Tanika said, is answer the questions. We do have to evaluate against set criteria. The thing that I think I'd encourage you to do as well, particularly if you're pitching to us, is during that tender evaluation period, if you've got any questions, you're seeking clarifications, reach out to us. If it's we can answer, we can share that answer with all the procurers, tenderers then, to give you confidence in that your tender hits the mark. So we're happy to entertain questions through that period. Again, answer all the questions, give us what we're asking for. A lot of the times, particularly in our space, and I think I mentioned this when I spoke, we don't know all the answers, so we don't know how to do everything. If you think you want to do something slightly differently, test it with us, possibly through an early conversation, through the procurement process, and we can then, like I say, we can then let everybody know. But a lot of the time, we're looking for your knowledge to come back to us as well. We won't get every brief right, we know that. So I'll use that tender, the procurement period, to seek any clarifications from us.
Thanks, John. And I'll just add a few. My area of council sometimes gets involved with unsuccessful tenderers. So my most common observation is not a full response. So if we're asking the question, answer the question in full. Even if it feels like you've already answered the question. I have seen the answer to question 12 is C, answer to question 6. That's not a response. So you've got to answer all the questions in full, even if it feels like double up. Also, make sure you really think about the answer, say, local supply chains. You heard from Tanika about local preference, local supply chains. I've seen responses such as, my auntie lives in the city of Moreton Bay. That's not going to get you the local supply benefit. It's up to you to show how workers, how the goods you're buying come from the city of Moreton Bay, how you are connected through your programs, supporting local schools, local charities. So there's a vast array of possible ways to demonstrate your connection to the local supply chain and local preference. So have a think about that in greater detail. A question for all of you on the panel here, and Tanika, you quite rightly presented safety as being the number one, and it is. Our CEO tells all staff in council safety is the number one priority and his top focus as our new CEO. But a really good question here about sustainability. And the question is, how will the Olympics shape the work council has to offer, especially relating to sustainability requirements? So from a procurement perspective, if you can answer how you're seeing changes or how you think sustainability needs to be presented in your future submissions. Tanika?
I'll kick off knowing that with Moreton, we've also just adopted our first environmental and sustainability strategy. So important from a procurement perspective is we now have a way to ensure that we embed the outcomes we're trying to achieve from council into our decision making. So I'm very fortunate that previously the focus may have just been on local, but now we're seeking to give equal consideration to local, social and sustainable outcomes in best value decision making. So what I'm really starting to see is that value proposition and responses. So whilst we may incorporate it in our criteria to be assessed against, we're seeing actually the suppliers lead the market in their value proposition as to what they're doing to lead sustainable outcomes. So what we aim to achieve is not only align ourselves to what we're trying to achieve with the state and federal, but start embedding that in our procurement decisions and our contract manual moving forward.
Anything Joel or John want to add?
Yeah, I'll probably just add to that. It's something that's generally we see a lot of it. It's expected the construction industry tries to pick up on how we manage the sustainable or management of materials. I think that journey needs to start well in advance in the planning and the design phase. So I guess I'll put the challenge to our design consultants and partners in that space to really think through the longer term project and the asset as to how that sustainability piece really fits in there. It's a little bit hard to try and address all those issues when you're in a sort of very prescribed materials project, as can be the case with the various infrastructure authorities, the Unity Waters, the Energexes. They're very prescribed standards. So to get ahead of that and try and advocate some sustainability through materials and processes, I think needs to be led by our planning and design teams.
Thanks. So just to add to that, this is quite a new space, I think, for everybody, particularly around, Tanika mentioned our new strategies, the net zero approach. What does that mean for us in terms of the design, delivery, planning of infrastructure and other assets and throughout council? This is where I would look, and I talk about that knowledge transfer piece at some of our industry partners who maybe have a broader spectrum across either Australia or the globe to bring some of those learnings into the conversations that we have, because we are, this is a relatively new journey, I think, for all of us. And the benefit for us of if you are a bigger organisation, if you have those networks outside of our region, is bringing that learned experience in. And one of the things that I think we've been relatively successful at as a city is being able to learn off of other people's experiences across a whole broad range of different elements of what we do. So, and again, I think it's, don't be bashful. We don't know all the answers. We will look to you to start to bring some of that intelligence into what we do, and for us to be able to have those conversations. I think that's probably enough from me on that.
Great. Thanks, John. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Economic Development Department of Council does run a business systems workshop that helps companies in our region who have aims of securing ISO 14001, which is the environmental standard, or other national, international standards, to help them bid for contracts not only with council, government, but tier 1 companies which typically have those kind of requirements. So make sure you go to the Economic Development Information booth to get more information on that program. It's heavily supported by council as we want to lift the capacity of our businesses in our region. Another key question, and you all touched on this. The question is, how do we get involved in the earlier project stages, the scoping, the briefing and concept design? Typically, they come to market with a concept design completed. John, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess if you look at the Integrated Transport Planning and Design team, I think I showed you the operational planning. That's where our early thought process is in terms of what the concept design and what the design of the actual ultimate asset looks like. But what I would also say, I think we're more than happy at that as we go through those stages, as we're starting to think around the environment sustainability, not just sustainability in terms of the environment, but we've got a housing shortage, so some of our concept designs possibly aren't reflective because of their age. They may be time damaged. Have that conversation with us as you go through that design. Don't feel that just because you've got a concept design, that's what we have to build. We're more than happy for you to come in and create challenge, and that's why I talk about the industry. We need to bring your knowledge into what we do. You've still got that opportunity. Then there is the forward planning program. I'm going to drop him in again, Simon Bennett at the back there. Probably the smartest I've ever seen him. I don't know whether he's got an interview after this, but have a chat with him, particularly for the Integrated Transport Planning and Design team. He's custodian of that early planning. So I think that's where we could see that. Even as you go through the project, please don't be bashful about challenging where it is, what it looks like, if you think it will provide us with betterment, or if you think it will hit some of those key objectives that we have as council and get us a better outcome.
Okay, anything either of you want to add?
No, just echoing John's points. I think the more engaged and the more conversations we're having with our, say, delivery partners and our consultants and people working in that space, the more awareness that we can leverage off in terms of knowledge and taking things into those future projects.
And just to highlight the acknowledgement of that, knowing that it is quite reactive and we are going to the market where there hasn't previously been it. But moving forward, we are on quite a maturity progression. So what we are aiming to do is that early market engagement with our suppliers prior to releasing to the tender to ensure we have an understanding of capacity and timeliness, but also any input of anything that we haven't yet considered as a council where we may incorporate that in. We also have to be very mindful knowing that there's always the probity protocols to ensure upholds, so it'll be incorporated as part of the tender process. But I also highlight where there is a very technical specification, we also, I guess, highlight the opportunity to ensure there's an alternative offer. If you have an innovative business solution that you haven't been engaged or consulted in the outset, whilst you still submit that conforming offer to council's requirements, again, that value proposition to ensure that your business, what you may have that we haven't yet considered, is something you can still incorporate in your offer as value add.
Okay, great. Tanika, I think I might get you to focus on the next question. There's about 3-4 questions all around the weighting involved in procurement. So I'm going to try and wrap up 3 or 4 questions into one, but they're all related, so bear with me. So council note that they don't want a tender price race to the bottom. Is there a consideration to change the focus, that is the percentage of the price weighting for procurement relative to others? Can you dive deeper into the scoring of tenders, the weighting of certain criteria relative to each other? And then there was a question here around if does supporting local workforce with trainees and apprentices provide any additional points in the weighting criteria? So it's all about, quite rightly, how does the weighting criteria work, and what percentage does price have relative to the others, and how can I make up my percentage points, I guess, in other areas relative to price as well?
This is probably how I've lost the most friends as quickly in Moreton Bay Council as coming. But we've started to remove the weightings, what we advertise or publish our documentation. But I can only highlight that when we identify the evaluation criteria and the relative importance of each criteria to nominate the percentage weighting against it, it really is to ensure that it's subjective and it's really tailored to that specific project need on how the evaluation committee or manager for that project considers value for money will be assessed. So there's not a one-size-fits-all, that price is a standardised percentage. In some instances also what we've done is we've done 100% in the non-price criteria, where then those who are conforming and competitive are progressed to then be assessed against price. So those who were not assessed as competitive or conforming in the non-price aren't then assessed against price. So I would only ensure, and the reason why I have specifically removed is we do understand, or I assume, in most instances, we were only getting really conforming responses where the criteria was high. We want to ensure that your actual response is best value overall, and we want to give you equal importance to each of the criteria to ensure how you address it. So the predetermination of the criteria is done prior to advertisement of the tender, and that's noted in our probity plans prior to release to the market. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's identifying the relative importance of each criteria on how we'll assess overall value for money. There is an internal scoring methodology which may range from 0 to 100 on how we assess each criteria. But ultimately, the evaluation committee predetermined the criteria, the percentage weightings, the scoring methodology, and to ensure a consistency of approach, there's a clear discussion on how they will be assessed by the committee against the tenderers. In response to the local, yes, so we give an opportunity for a percentage, whether you are a local business, so you get maximum opportunity if you are a local business, but there are further, points or weightings to be achieved if you source locally or you are creating jobs locally. So we do an assessment which is published on our website of our local preference policy, whether you're a local business, if you source locally or if you employ locally.
So Tanika, just to clarify, pricing doesn't mean that price gets 80% out of the 100%. Pricing can be anywhere from 0 to X. It's one component, it's not necessarily the dominant component of a tender?
Absolutely. It's critical for me to ensure that we educate that it's not the cheapest. We want best value decision makings, and it may range from anything from 20% to 80% if it's a goods. However, as I mentioned, we're starting to incorporate those stages where we're only progressing tenderers at each stage who meet the requirements of the mandatory, the non-price, who are then assessed against price. So it's critical for council that we get best value responses, and price is not the leading consideration in that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and that's what everyone in the room today and everyone watching online really needs to look at your whole submission. Whether it's a request for quote or a tender, look at your whole submission and your whole offer, your track record, and the capability within your organisation to deliver on those objectives. There's also a related question here. If I'm not local, how do I connect to supply chains? Local supply chains? Well, first of all, if you're not local, come talk to us. We want you to be. But we understand that's not an option for everybody. As Anne mentioned earlier, there is an economic development department that's there to help you connect locally. So that could be to connect into local training organisations, to connect into the local TAFE, the university, local groups, local supply chains, and a range of other connections. So come talk to the Economic Development Department and we can help identify opportunities to connect you to those supply chains to help you make a better bid. But ultimately it's up to you to show that in your submission you are contributing locally. Again, we want local companies to win, but it can't be at the expense of getting the best value for money and the best outcome for ratepayers. So local companies, just being local isn't enough. You have to explain as a local company how you are supporting locally as well. So that's really important. Just because you're local doesn't mean you don't have to try in your submission, in your tender. You have to explain all the same connections and opportunities that others have to. A couple of quick ones for you, Tanika. Does the Moreton Bay Council have an Indigenous procurement target?
Maybe something specifically, I don't believe at the moment. I know in our RED strategy there are specific actions we are to achieve, specifically ensuring that we are engaging and maximising opportunities. And also moving forward, whilst there may not be a specific target, but we are looking also to embed that in our contract manual. So no specific target unless I'm corrected in that space, but definitely key action outcomes that we are to achieve to ensure that we are supporting our Indigenous businesses.
Great. Another one for you. Is it possible to get feedback if your tender is unsuccessful?
I would strongly suggest the feedback, so successful or unsuccessful, and with the hands that were raised earlier, I would strongly ensure that you reach out to get feedback if you were unsuccessful and successful. We want to ensure that specifically if you are local, again, we can provide you feedback on how to submit a more conforming and competitive offer. And the feedback is supposed to be constructive to assist you specifically against each of the criteria. Each of the evaluation committee records their decisions of the assessment, and we can share that in a constructive manner as to where you may have scored well and where there's opportunities for improvement. Also give you an indication if your price was competitive or not. So unsuccessful or successful, strongly encourage you to seek a debriefing and feedback, either.
Great, thanks. Now, I know this next question can be how long's a piece of string, but John and Joel, how long does it normally take for the tender to be awarded? So I know it'll vary depending on the type of tender, but can you give the group here today an indication of some examples of how long it might take?
Do you want to pick this one up? Yes.
So, yeah, as Paul alluded to, there's no right or wrong answer for this. There's no specific time. It comes down to a raft of different contributing factors, the complexity of the project, the number of offers that have been received, all of which need to be evaluated and assessed by the panel. Depending on the detail of some of those submissions, there may need to be further clarification, tender interviews and so forth to really understand what has been presented. There's no set time frame for that. We endeavour to try and turn around that process in terms of evaluation and assessment within a 2 to 3 week period. Rule of thumb, but there are certainly circumstances that may prolong that. The other, I guess, award component, depending on where the budget sits, some of the tenders recommendations do need to go to a council general meeting. Those meetings are generally 2 per month, and the reports or the recommendations are required to be submitted a minimum of 2 weeks in advance. So potentially that could add a 4-week extension to that assessment process to be able to confirm the tender award.
Okay.
So, I will add to that, and it picks up on what Tanika said around the maturity, us maturing as an organisation, and we talk about working more collaboratively with our industry partners. What we're trying to do as well is be more communicative during that process, so that what we don't see is you put something into us, you put a tender into us, and then we disappear for 3 months, 4 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is. What we're trying to do is get to a point where you're collectively informed along the way as to not a regular conversation, but if it's going to take a little bit longer, that we just put something out to the tenderers to say, hey, look, just be advised, this needs a process. It may take a bit longer. We're at the start of that journey. I think Tanika mentioned around us maturing, but we do appreciate. We have instances where if it takes too long, you have to redeploy your resources, or you have to redeploy what you're doing. We don't want to lose, those preferred tenderers. So there's a comms piece we probably need to work on as an organisation.
And if there's a clear expectation, I can try to, what we do try to ensure is a validity period of tenders in 90 days. So council are to undertake the assessment and award within the 90-day period. Only in the instance where we are not going to achieve that, we'll reach out to the tenderers to seek an extension. But to start the string, 90 days.
And thank you, everyone. And obviously the projects vary in complexity, not only in terms of the project scope itself, but funding partners. Sometimes you've got state, federal, co-contribution in addition to council. You need to get permissions and approvals, and we often have that debate inside council about wanting to move quicker, but sometimes it is hard when you've got various funding partners. But obviously we have a goal of doing it as quickly as possible. And also we're talking about, as per John's example, some really complex projects. You need specialty staff with technical skills to do all that evaluation. But who here in the room has had the opportunity to review a council procurement report? Anyone? No hands. What a surprise. So you can actually go onto the council website, just type into Google City of Moreton Bay minutes and meetings, and pretty much at every council meeting, as Joel mentioned, you will find a procurement report. I'd encourage you to have a look at it. So the report will actually answer some of the questions being asked today, which talks about local value for money, which talks about when the tender initially went and when it's being awarded. So you can actually review it. It'll honestly only take you about 30 seconds to find it and maybe 5 minutes to read one. And I'd encourage everyone to read one report just so you know what actually gets presented in a council meeting around those procurement. There's obviously technical reports and worksheets and confidential information behind the scenes, but it'd be worth you seeing what's presented in a public-facing document in that regard. Now, Athol asked about for planning projects, will future projects all be procured via local buy panel? Is it worthwhile submitting to local buy? I think we've answered that one. Council has its own panels. Council will do requests for quotes. Local buy certainly provides you opportunities with all 77 councils, large public institutions such as Energex and the like. So always worth considering being on local buy. It's not necessarily how John or Joel procure. Some parts of council use it. Some have their own panels. Anything else to add? So hopefully, Athol, that's answered your question. If not, come and talk to the group as well. A question here, council's putting a lot to the market in the coming months. That creates a large bidding effort and cost for industry. Any ability to spread the opportunities?
So speaking from our space, we have to try and get to market as quickly as we can because we have to spend the money this financial year. So there is that commitment for us. The way we look to spread it is we'll speak to those suppliers that we're going to market to ask them if they've got the capacity to bid and also to deliver. So we are trying to transition towards a slightly smoother process, but our budgetary process at the moment is annual from our perspective, so it makes it quite difficult. But we will endeavour to smooth it out from our perspective. I don't know how the rest of council's going to manage that.
Yeah, I think the other point to add as well, there's a lot of smaller value projects that council have traditionally tendered separately. What we are doing now is to look at utilising some of the panel arrangements and start to bundle up those packages into appropriately sized packages that, one, provide, I guess, a little bit of pipeline to the supply chain, but secondly, it also reduces the time, cost, effort associated with multiple tendering applications.
I'll respond from a corporate lens. As I mentioned earlier, our potential transition is strategic. At the moment, what we're aiming to do is take everything at the back of the planning, and that needs to be in the forefront. So we are currently seeking to develop a forward contracting plan, which is a portfolio of all the procurement activities in which we must invite public tenders for. So should council decide by resolution to adopt that, that'll be published on our website. And a part of that process is to ensure that we aggregate and leverage opportunities to ensure that we're simplifying the process for our suppliers, and we're going out for the supply and demand that we need that meets the best value for council. So from a transparency perspective, that is aimed to be up prior to February, and that'll give an indication to the suppliers on where we're expected to be at the market for those tenders. So we always try to ensure that however we're approaching our strategy is best for the capacity and capability of our suppliers. But from a corporate lens, we are looking to start aggregating that and being more transparent on when we're expecting to go to the market.
Great, thank you. Great question here. What platform does council provide for the public business to pitch new ideas outside of tender opportunities to help City of Moreton Bay continue to grow? Steve Butler, where are you? Stand up. Steve's up the back. So Steve runs a program called Innovate Moreton Bay, which is funded by council. They are running two programs. They've already two programs coming up, a sustainability demo day and an innovations demo day. So that's where we put out expressions of interest to the business community to say, hey, if you've got something that's really innovative, come and tell us and show us what it can do. And we get in the room, not just council managers such as Tanika, John and Joel, but we get Unity Water, we get Energex, we get Auto and General, we get the university, and we get other players, so we can expose you to those potential customers. So go see Steve about those opportunities. We were talking earlier, John, Joel and myself, about these kind of opportunities, and more opportunities do have to be created for local businesses to pitch. But John, you mentioned if there's innovations out there, especially in that planning stage, you want to hear about them early. You want people reaching out to you and your team.
Yeah, so as Paul said, we had this conversation around our capacity to take on board those innovations that are in the marketplace, but we've got in the Integrated Transport Planning Design team, we've got a relatively traditional outcome that we're looking to achieve. And if there are innovations in the market that people are aware of that think will add value to what we do, will help us get that better outcome, then we're more than happy to receive, to catch up for a chat, to have a lunch and learn, for you to come in and talk to us about it. Again, we're about building our capability and knowledge of what's out there. Might not be right for us at this time, but I can probably think of at least 2 examples off the bat where people have come in and we've been able to start to develop a relationship with them and start to deploy some of that innovation in achieving our outcomes. So understand what we're trying to achieve. Tanika mentioned the strategies, have a look at those. Again, we're in a relatively, the transport planning and the transport market's relatively well defined. You'll kind of know what we're looking to achieve. If you think you've got something different, come and talk to us.
Anything you want to add, Joel?
Yeah, I think just, I guess, probably a bit further down in the process, but as Tanika touched on before, alternative tenders. By all means, submit a conforming tender to what's been requested, but if you're in a position to advocate a more cost-effective or an innovative solution or a particular product or material, by all means, submit that as an alternative tender.
And I think, if I understood the question correctly, and if I know the mind of a business, it's always about the next opportunity. So fundamentally, today is an opportunity to network. Make sure you get contact details, connect with people on LinkedIn if that's your thing, reach out to the teams who are here, reach out to them via the council email system, register, as Tanika said, in all those various portals so that you're there collecting information and opportunities, and reach out to the economic development team again. If we see there's enough interest in a category, in a specific area, we have no problem knocking on the door of John and Joel or Wes, who's our manager for parks and planning, or other areas of council, to say, hey, there's 6 businesses in this category, we think we should do a workshop, or we think we should do a roundtable so we learn what's happening in the industry. It's in our interest to get the best specification possible. Ultimately, we want the best result for the project, for ratepayers. So the more informed we are about innovation, the more informed we are about solutions, the better we'll be able to perform. So we're maturing in that space. You can reach out now. We're not going to be able to do 15 meetings a week just to manage expectations, but we will create those opportunities every quarter for businesses to engage. But there's nothing stopping you sending a proactive email, reaching out with your solution or offer. Tanika, a couple of questions for you around the procurement process. With regards to the procurement exceptions, could you please summarise the process Council will undertake to select a short list of tenderers?
Yes, so with regards to the exceptions, I assume when we're engaging under a corporate arrangement, how we may then engage under that. So again, in every procurement decision, whether it's under an exception or establishing a new contract, we must always give consideration to the sound contracting procedures and principles. Principles. So in this instance, Council at the moment for each one still predetermines how we're going to assess that. Includes the evaluation criteria for each of those responses, whether it be under a panel arrangement or for an exception or for just inviting quotations. So again, it's the predetermination on ensuring how we're assessing value for money, and we shortlist our suppliers in that instance by assessing their response against the criteria that we nominate. So whether they have the relevant experience of similar scale, size and scope, if they have the technical capacity, it may come down to quality, environmental and safety, but we still undertake a process because we still must justify that any decision that we make has given consideration to those principles and demonstrates value for money for Council.
Similar theme about technical aspects. Insurance requirements are sometimes too onerous for the small scope risk profile of the jobs. Will Council review the suitability of insurance limits requested?
Yeah, definitely. So there's an opportunity in anything to put departures to the contracts. In the instances, Council will go out with our default insurance requirements. If you are seeking a departure to those, you would complete what departure it is and what insurance level that was. And in the justification, if it's not industry standard, if you do believe we are asking above what our default is, that's when we can take and get the appropriate advice to see if it would be appropriate, which manages, obviously, it from a perspective for that project. But if it's not project specific and we have just gone out for the default, absolutely, there's an opportunity to review that as a departure to the contract.
Great. There's a few questions here on sustainability, which I think we touched on earlier, but I'll just recap as there are a few questions there. So sustainability is very important to us as a council. You heard Tanika talk about our environment and sustainability strategy. So everyone should be making a submission about how they manage sustainability. To what degree is really up to you and, again, the project. There are international standards, as I said earlier, like ISO 14001. Does a company of 2 people need to have ISO 14001 to get a $5,000 contract? Probably not. So it's really horses for courses, but you should have a standard position on your environment sustainability, your practices, and how you meet and exceed criteria. You should be responding to that in the tender. And obviously for the larger jobs, the bigger, more complex contracts, I would be encouraging you to look at a more formal system, something that is nationally, internationally recognised. Again, Council does offer a program, a business systems program, so reach out to the economic development team who can make you aware of when those sessions are and connect you to explore what training and opportunities exist. So hopefully that's answered a few of those sustainability questions we had. Success stories. We've had some requests for success stories or examples we can share of local businesses being approved through the tender process. Anything anyone on the panel would like to mention?
I can give it a crack knowing I've only been at Moreton for a few months, but not specifically a success story. I'm still halfway through any of the assessments I'm undertaking. But I can genuinely let you know the intent and willingness of every council staff member that I've worked with to ensure that we are maximising opportunities for local, and in the instance targeting local. So we're also highlighting the opportunities going forward as to what that can look like for our success stories. I have no doubt there are many of them, but my lack of experience with the council thus far hasn't many success stories I can share.
The market that I tend to go to market for tends to be, unfortunately there aren't many businesses within our region, city that do what we do. There are one or two that we are trying to cultivate relationships with, and I have to say the work that we have done with that organisation, I won't name them I don't think, has been really successful, and largely because we had a really easy relationship. It goes back to what you talk about in terms of procurement. We're a relatively simple organisation, if you like, and I mean in the sense that when we ask for something, it's generally what we want, notwithstanding the fact that we have the innovation piece. We worked quite well with that organisation because they were, receptive of the fact that what we were looking for was a design for a road, and they were able to work with us on that, delivered it really well. One of the very few businesses in our city that is locally based, and we kind of accept that from where we are. The sort of stuff that we're looking for doesn't generally sit within our region. I was trying to rack my brains, and I might get pulled up on this. I think there is an organisation in Brendale that's done some work for the feds, looking at LiDAR testing or LiDAR monitoring at intersections around potential travel behaviours. I think that's a Brendale-based organisation. I'm hoping I'm not getting this wrong. And they've done some really good work for the federal government that we're able to leverage as well around an innovation in road safety for us. I think those are probably where we are at the moment in our space.
Yeah, nothing specific, but I do think organisations and businesses that support their staff base that live in the region and make that opportunity from a working perspective, I think that's something that we continue to see more and more of as well.
Yeah.
Maybe, sorry.
Go on, sorry.
Just
Tanika.
touching, knowing, and Anne, correct me again, but knowing that we are becoming a small business-friendly council with over 90% of our businesses being small to medium businesses, I highlight one of the key success stories for us is that spend under $50,000, which target those businesses. The fact that over 50% of our spend under $50,000 is with local, I think that demonstrates that while there may not be a critical or success story that's jumping out, that in itself demonstrates that we are genuinely not only just maximising opportunities, but procuring from our local businesses.
Thanks, Tanika. And I was going to say something along those lines. Again, I get to read those reports none of you have read. Half of them are going to local businesses. So that's everything from mowing, pruning, construction of paths, engineering services, design services, IT services, a whole range of different products and services going to locals. If you're a local business, though, and you know you can't secure the contract, why not reach out to someone outside of region and actually knock on their door and say, hey, I see all these opportunities with the City of Moreton Bay. I'd like to be making submissions. Do you want to work together? So there are different ways to skin a cat. Terrible term, sorry. Now, I can't remember if I've asked this one or not. We've mentioned safety as the biggest priority for council. How does a business elaborate on this in tenders to get the best possible outcome?
So in the response forms that we put out, we ask specific questions for the tenderers or respondents to answer to. So it's not a bit of a guess and put in any information. Specifically in capital works projects, the evaluation criteria includes a specific response forms asking for specific, whether it be a safety management plan, what your management systems are, how many injuries you may have had, SWIMS, job safety analysis, whatever it may be. So specifically for tenders, we include a response form that asking you to submit information that we will then assess your safety management systems. So the mandatory pass-fail and inclusive of what we're specifically asking tenderers to provide for us to assess that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to touch on a couple of questions quickly I think have been answered to some degree. If you want to submit an alternate tender, should you submit a tender to specifications also? Yes, you must first meet the specification and then submit an alternate tender. Tender for John and Joel, tender and quotation submissions can at times be costly, sometimes in the order of 10% of the project value. Is there an approach available to minimise this?
So I would say answer look. Again, we're not a complex organisation. Generally, our briefs are relatively straightforward. We're looking for you to, and notwithstanding the ability to put a non-conforming tender in, we're looking for you to answer the questions. We don't weigh tenders. If you've answered the questions, if you've given us the methodology back, if you put the right resources in, you're on a par. We are happy to, as I said, have those conversations through the procurement process as well, if you wanted to narrow down the effort that you need to put in. Notwithstanding what Tanika mentioned earlier, the fact that we're now putting that I've presented to you today, the budgets for everything as well, it gives you an idea really of the scale of what we're doing as well. So again, you should be able to hone that down. When I mentioned earlier, we are looking to really reach out, as Tanika said, to make sure that you have the capability and the capacity. That's the other time that you can have that conversation around what we're looking for. Again, I have to say I have the attention span of a child on cordial, so if you give me something that's too substantive, you've probably lost me on page 10. And the team are the same. It's succinct responses that give us, I guess, the confidence that you can do the job and that we can assess you against everybody else. I think that's probably a very long way about saying just keep your tenders brief.
I think just to expand on that, and Tanika's touched on it, from project management perspective, we're looking to leverage with Tanika and the procurement team's support, fastest way to market, obviously meeting all the relevant requirements. But what that might mean is instead of just everything going to an open tender, which could be a list of 40 or 50 potential suppliers, without any prior knowledge that that's coming to market, we also suffer the point that if we haven't advocated that the project's coming to market and we've gone to open tender, sometimes no one's available to actually respond. So that's our disadvantage as well. So what we'll be doing, as I mentioned earlier, is looking to utilise those panel arrangements, reach out to suppliers, a limited number of suppliers specific to that project that we believe are appropriate and suitable to conduct that work. Give them the opportunity to be aware that it's coming. Our questions will be around, do you have the right people? Do you have the capacity to respond to the submission when it comes? Do you have the ability to deliver the project in the timeframe that we're looking for? In that context, we expect that you'll be able to make the decision for yourself whether it's worth your time and investment, whether, I guess, a reduced competition rate. Instead of 1 of 40, you'll probably be 1 of 4, 1 of 5. And I think that's a much more competitive opportunity, which would be of increased appetite, which means we are likely to get a much better response by the right people with the right capabilities to deliver the project we're looking to deliver.
Coming in as a fresh lens, the understanding council previously has gone and invited public tenders in the good faith of trying to do always what's best. And as we said, we're really working closely with our internal customers to understand what their business needs are to ensure that we're approaching the market. And procurement are a very fortunate position where both internal staff are our customers, but so are our suppliers. So we have the hat on also understanding it is a significant time and investment, and we want to ensure that when we are going to the market, we're doing the appropriate strategy, and that may mean, as what Joel mentioned specifically, instead of inviting public tenders for every project, which is a significant resource from a capability and capacity, the intent is to establish a register of pre-qualified suppliers, build solid relationships with those suppliers to have a clear understanding of the expectations for those projects and provide a clearer understanding of what our forward procurement work looks like under that arrangement, which will then avoid having to invite public tenders. It'll create competitive tension on that arrangement between the suppliers, but it'll also build the relationship up to have a clearer understanding and working with council for a much higher certainty of upcoming works. So that's the intent of where we are going to really try to have a key understanding of the investment to our suppliers and ensure our strategy to the market is most suitable also for your business.
Yeah, thank you, Tanika. And look, fundamentally, if I can wrap it up in what all three are saying is we want to be, hopefully we are, respectful of your time. We do know it takes time to submit a quality tender. There's an opportunity cost. So rest assured, if we've gone out to tender, it's because we have to, for value thresholds or other reasons. We are not doing it to waste anyone's time, ours or yours. So if you see a tender, that's why. We are running out of time. I'm just going to answer a few questions quickly, and then I'd encourage you to meet with the council attendees. Do projects sent to tender ever not progress? Yep, they don't, for a variety of reasons, but they don't. Will the 23-24 budget councils decided what projects are delivered from internal resources and what projects are going to market? I think John provided a glimpse of where we've got internal capability and where we go to the market. So that's an example. We go to market more often than we go internal, except for the operational works. Operational works, we do have dedicated teams and capability to do things in-house. How can new suppliers be supported, encouraged, especially in the IT sector? We gave you some examples on the Innovations Day, the Sustainability Demo Day. Go have a talk to Steve from Innovate Moreton Bay, talk to the Economic Development team about those opportunities. With regards to design opportunities due to market this year, what is Council's current procurement strategy? Local buy arrangements, select invite, combination of all of those. And you just heard from Tanika about select panels and local buy and all those arrangements. So it is tough, I admit, as a business. You've got to be across all the channels a council may use to secure procurement. And that comes down to the value, the complexity, the various thresholds. So you need to be across all of those opportunities, and Anne will give you some ideas on how you can stay on top of that when she wraps up later. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close off there because I think that's been really valuable from our panel members, and we really encourage you to stick around and have a chat. I think you can actually get not only a lot of your questions answered face-to-face, which is a treat in this day and age, but you can actually introduce your company and your products and services to the people that go out to market. So can you please join me in thanking John, Joel and Tanika.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, team. I think that was a really rich and deep exploration of quite a few topics. And yeah, I personally thank everyone here. So I'm standing between you and this lovely morning tea, which is from a local business, which is Ange from the Coffee Patch in Hasking Street in Caboolture. So primarily, there's quite a few takeaways. I'm not going to spend a long time wrapping that up. Instead, I'm going to ask you, so there'll be some takeaways there, subscribe. Subscribe to Moreton Business Connect. Some of you would have received an email invitation to this event directly from that newsletter. That is going to be the mechanism that we communicate with you. Also, as Tanika and the team have explained, sign up to e-Procure, sign up to VendorPanel, look at the local buy panels, etc. So be proactive, get engaged, and that's the best way you'll see these opportunities come down the pipeline. So in addition to signing up, we've also got another opportunity. The federal government are here, and they'll be hosting an introduction to Australian government procurement for suppliers event at the Caboolture Hub this afternoon at 2 p.m. Spaces are limited and it is filling up, but please see the Future Made in Australia representatives, Rachel and Audrey, for more information. Okie doke, one last task. You have your devices in front of you. I would like you to go on and tell us how we went. So as we said, this is our first. We really want to hear whether we hit the mark or there was things that we missed, etc. Rest assured, we will be coming back regardless if you give us a poor score. We will take that on and we'll do better. So whilst you're doing that, there's just one or two, maybe three questions, I'm not sure. I'll just point out the booths. We've got local buy, we referenced earlier. State Government, Department of Energy and Public Works. Thank you, team. We've got the federal government, Future Made in Australia. Thank you, team. We've also got representatives from our circular economy platform, Aspire. Please go and find out how you can get involved in the circular economy, including a double-sided marketplace, what your waste might be somebody else's treasure, and there's value associated with that transaction. We've also got guests from the Office of Defence Industry Support. Thank you, team. So from the City of Moreton Bay, we've got quite a few departments. You've obviously got Joel's and John's department and Tanika's department here along the back. Infrastructure planning delivery, procurement. We've also got disaster management. Vicky and the team are here to talk through some of those opportunities to be prepared. They've got some fabulous resources. And as Paul referenced, we've got the economic development team. Big thank you to Steve Butler from Innovate Moreton Bay for helping us with today's event. Can we give him a round of applause? It's no easy feat putting on a major event, and I really thank you for your time. It's very special. I would also like to thank the team at MSEC. What a great venue if you're thinking about hosting these types of things. And a big thank you again to Paul, Tanika, Joel and John. And we'll wrap up. Don't forget to press your submission to our questions, and please mingle and enjoy our hospitality. Thank you very much.